Several girls gossip about the rumors that their school, Shinryu Academy, is built over a massive gravesite. Their dorm mother, Rei, reminds them to go to sleep. As she looks over the brilliant moon, she remarks that a certain someone is protecting the tenuous peace they all have. When the clock strikes midnight, the moon turns red and a massive mausoleum erupts from the ground. At the very top lies a brilliant, shining silver jewel, which becomes the target of innumerable hordes of night creatures. A boy named Sui, accompanied by his pet cat, Wanchoi, defends the mausoleum from the invaders. He swoops down like a raging river, slicing, dicing, and julienning his way through the monsters. With his two flaming swords in hand, he carves a path, all while wishing his service would come to an end. Sui continues to fight through the zombies, though several have amalgamated into larger, towering giants. Surrounded, he unleashes his trump card, the Thousand Graves, causing gigantic headstones to sprout from the ground, toppling and impaling every zombie within his line of sight. Sui is fighting to protect this world and a certain someone. He jumps down to fight the remaining zombies, and his battle begins anew. A year ago, Sui, a penniless high schooler who takes on odd jobs to make ends meet, works as a cleaner at a local pool. When a few bullies toss Wanchoi into the water, Sui, who is unable to swim, fearlessly dives in after him, and he seemingly drowns. However, he awakens a few hours later and learns from his friend, Ran Xiao, that he was saved by Rei, the wealthy daughter of a game developer at God Great Tech Company, or the GGTC. When he realized he was saved by mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, he starts wondering about the proper protocol. At night, a young couple starts getting a little too flirty at the local graveyard. They run away when two pairs of red eyes start staring at them, which only turns out to be Sui on the job. Sui returns to his station, which is hooked up to Shinryu Academy's electricity lines. He passes the time by playing an online game called Dungeon Century, where he is famously known as Gin, an enigmatic, silent player who defeats every single boss with the worst imaginable equipment. When he sees a player being chased by a mushroom kickbacker, he rescues her with a single physical attack. The girl introduces herself as Rei, but before he can reply, his power goes out. While trying to fix the electrical wiring, he overhears Rei talking about a mysterious player who helped her, but he is spotted. No amount of explanation could ever save Sui from this situation. The other girl throws a pillow at him, while calling him a pervert. The next day, an injured Sui is cleaning the school windows when he eavesdrops on Rei, who boasts that her father made Dungeon Century. However, as her friend points out, Rei isn't any good at the game, but she enjoys it nonetheless. Rancho notices that Sui has become smitten with Rei, and warns him that trying to woo her will only end in tragedy. Sui convinces himself that all he cares about is getting stronger in Dungeon Century, and nothing else matters. Later, while checking on his character, he suddenly receives a friend request from Rei. Sui accepts her request, and over the next few months, the two go on various adventures together. Rei hopes to meet and get to know the real Sui one day, but because he is far too busy with his part-time work, he laments that they live in completely different worlds. His only dream is that they continue to adventure together forever. However, one evening, Sui is slapped with an end-of-service announcement for Dungeon Century. Sui is devastated by the announcement, which spells the end for both his favorite pastime and his adventures with Rei. Meanwhile, at Rei's house, Rei's father, Yuki, gives her a parcel and instructs her to open it when the time is right. He declares that Dungeon Century's role as a prototype has ended, and his next game is what will truly change the world, which he boasts will be a reality that surpasses reality. He jokingly apologizes for ending the game right when Rei made a new partner, and she is embarrassed that she was being monitored. A depressed Sui loafs around the school fountain. Rancho encourages him to physically approach Rei, while his girlfriend is surprised that Sui's never even talked to Rei in real life. Sui trudges home, and Yuki's car passes by him. That evening, Rei's roommate Maki goes to sleep ahead of her while she logs into Dungeon Century. She overhears other players grumbling about the game ending after spending so much money on it. However, they mention something called an evening songflower, said to be able to grant one in-game wish of the player's desire. When Sui finally logs in after leaving his part-time job, Rei pulls him along to make the most of their last week together. While adventuring, Rei tells him of her wish to find the evening songflower, said to be hidden in a faraway flower field. Sui offers to help her find it, and she is overjoyed. They frolic underneath an overgrown leaf umbrella, and they laugh as droplets of water splash on their faces. Meanwhile, God Grave Tech Company announced their next upcoming title, Grave Buster, which will have players hunt for treasures hidden in graveyards and tombs. A selling point is that the more you spend money on the game, the stronger you get, which is exactly like any other pay-to-win game. Fortunately, they will freely distribute a custom phone-like console, the C-Bay, to anyone who wants to play it. Yuki, proud of this mess that only electronic arts could have made, boasts that this is only the beginning. The final day of Dungeon Century arrives, and Sui is filled with a deep-seated sadness. A large parade is held in-game, which will continue until the strike of midnight. Yuki observes the in-game festivities from his office, declining his assistant's suggestion to return home. Meanwhile, a red-haired woman named Elle infiltrates Yuki's office. Elle demands to know how to enter the last tomb, but when Yuki refuses, she kills him. Sui, already late for his meetup time with Rei, races back as fast as he can, but his bike breaks down, causing him to fall down a slope. Rei, tired of waiting for Sui, asks the bartender for a favor, and she heads to a beautiful flower field. Soon after, in-game, the city is in flames after being attacked by a mysterious individual who kills everyone they come across. Rei realizes it far too late, and she watches in horror as they claim even more victims. Sui runs all the way back to the dorm area and uses every ounce of his strength to run to his computer. Rei does her best to fend off the mysterious attacker, but they prove to be too powerful a foe. Sui finally logs in and receives Rei's message that she has gone ahead to the flower field. When he arrives, he finds her equipment gone, and he cradles her in his arms. She apologizes for not being able to find the evening song flower, but when their tears mix, the seemingly ordinary flower she is holding blooms into the very flower they were searching for. However, Rei is killed by the mysterious enemy, and Sui is powerless to save her, literally. The clock strikes 12, and the game goes offline for good. The next morning, Sui solemnly goes to his part-time job. He notices Rei standing and carrying Wantoi in her arms. She realized that Sui was Jin all along, and she thanks him for helping her all this time. She invites him to play the next game, Grave Buster, with her, and he happily accepts. Suddenly, the handlebars of his bike break, and he wonders how he'll be able to get to his part-time job. Soon after, Yuki's murder is discovered, and Sui runs as fast as he can to the female dorms, but he learns that Rei has already left to make funeral arrangements. Rei mourns the passing of her father at the memorial service, where he is remembered as a jolly man who wanted to make games and spread happiness to all. However, while staring at a photo of Yuki, Sui somehow recognizes him. A few days later, Sui meets with Rei at her father's office. She gives him the parcel that her father left behind, which was addressed to Sui. Inside the box is a seabay, specifically made for him. Sui finds it strange that he was given something like this, and Rei reveals that she isn't Yuki's biological daughter. Rei leaves to meet a few guests at her doorstep, while Sui finishes the calibration of his seabay. When it finally loads up, he is in disbelief at the massive inheritance that Yuki has left behind for him, amounting to 10 billion yen. He drops the phone in shock, and an audio recording plays with Yuki's voice, revealing that he is Sui's true grandfather. Yuki explains that he left Sui a large amount of wealth so that he could live a happy life with Rei, but there is another reason. Rei's parents, who were Yuki's partners, were murdered by the enemy, and he adopted Rei to keep her safe. He asks Sui to use these resources to protect Rei at all costs. Outside, debt collectors attempt to bring Rei into custody, but Sui races downstairs and confronts them. Sui tries to rescue Rei, but he is given a public beatdown. Unwilling to see him injured any further, Rei promises to willingly go with them. Sui offers to pay the 500 million yen debt of her father, but unfortunately, the 10 billion yen he has inside Grave Buster is not transferable into real-world currency. So what the hell was Yuki going on about? Rei is taken away, but she is grateful that Sui tried to save her, and she'll never forget him. Sui defiantly hops on his bike and chases down a car going 60 kilometers per hour on the freeway. He reaches out his hand and promises to save Rei one day, and she promises to wait as long as it takes. The debt collectors do a bit of trolling by suddenly hitting the brakes and pulling behind Sui. His bike spirals out of control, and he wipes out. However, a man known as Silicon mysteriously teleports inside the vehicle and rescues Rei. When Sui catches up, Silicon tells him that a man named Temujin will be waiting for him inside Grave Buster. A moment later, Silicon disappears. Sui returns home and tries to get his seabay to work, but to no avail. While trying to process today's events, a woman suddenly pops out of his phone and introduces herself as Twin Star. I had a dream like this once. They are enveloped in a white glow, and they are transported into the sandy dunes of Grave Buster. However, once there, Twin Star transforms into two fluffy creatures. A huge structure bursts out of the sand, and Sui has no time to rest. In the world of Grave Buster, the primordial goddess known as Bango gave life to the universe, ultimately sacrificing her life. Now she slumbers in her eternal tomb, just waiting to be raided. The living tomb tells Sui that he must pass a trial and serve as his tomb guardian, but Sui tries to leave. Suddenly, a large blast of light narrowly misses him and the tomb, prompting a raider, Phoebe, to tell his teammate, Ayu, to adjust his aim by a few centimeters. She then instructs Farin to distract the living tomb while Ayu charges up his rifle. The living tomb finally convinces Sui to uphold his duty. It shines a bright light towards the sand, which summons Shastia, the desert incarnate. She suddenly kisses Sui, which breaks the seal placed over his memories. He recalls a memory of Yuki giving him a red scarf, which corroborates Yuki's claim that he was his grandfather. Sui and Shastia look at the living tomb, and they are surprised to see Yuki emerge from it. Yuki explains that he has many identities: a game developer, the vice president of GGTC, and Rei's affectionate father. But he is, above all, his grandfather. Yuki explains that he is a copy of the real person's consciousness, uploaded into Grave Buster before his untimely death. Meanwhile, the raiders are ready to attack again. Phoebe tosses her deck of cards into the air and summons a swarm of giant centipedes. Farin swoops in and unleashes a barrage of PlayStation-themed laser bolts, but her gun quickly runs dry. She is supported by Phoebe's centipedes, and together, they descend upon the Tomb Guardian. Sui and the others are forced to run inside the tomb. Yuki leads Sui into the cockpit of the Guardian Giant Yuki-34. Farin finally slices apart the outer shell of the pyramid, but from its ruins emerges a giant Egyptian mecha suit. With lasers, Tomb Raiders and Tomb Guardians have been fighting for 1,000 years within the world of Grave Buster. This is just like any other ordinary day. Farin bombards the Guardian Giant from above as Sui and Shastia frantically try to operate it. One of their legs is blown clean off, but Sui finally finds something that will help: a gun. The Guardian Giant draws a gigantic pistol, and Farin is in awe of how massive his gun is. Their oversized pistol fires a laser blast toward Phoebe and Ayu's hiding spot, but Phoebe's card magic reflects the blast, causing the giant guardian to stagger back. Ayu decides to return the favor with a powerful attack of his own, while Phoebe pulls another trick up her sleeve. Using this, Shastia falls under the effects of hypnosis after seeing Phoebe's cards, and she starts firing uncontrollably into any club suits. While Sui tries to get her under control, centipedes begin breaching the Guardian's defenses. However, Yuki's save data begins to disappear. With his last dying megabytes, he tells Sui that he is the last guardian of Grave Buster, and he instructs him to protect Bango's tomb. In doing so, he will indirectly save Rei's life. Sui mourns his death, but Yuki's passing bestows Sui with a mysterious new power. Sui flies out aboard a commandeered centipede and takes to the skies. With the help of Shastia, he vaporized Farin instantly. Reflecting the same beam, he next eliminates Phoebe. In final act of defiance, Ayu fires his fully charged particle gun, but Sui reflects his attack back, killing him. Later, Shastia congratulates Sui on becoming a fully fledged Tomb Guardian. However, her role in this stage has come to an end, and she bids him farewell. Suddenly, Sui finds himself face to face with a crazed woman who claims to be the true last guardian. She shot him with the gun while laughing maniacally. Meanwhile, at another place, Rei is washed clean by frolicking mermaids. Later, a large burly man enters Rei's room and she demands to be freed. He holds up her chin and reassures her that, in time, she won't want to leave. As he exits the room, the writing on his back reveals his name, Temujin. Sui awakens in bed, his wounds instantly heals. He then receives a phone call from Temujin, from the group Totems, who invites him to come see him at Grave Busters. He then receives a threatening and incriminating photo of Rei as blackmail. Sui tries to learn more information about Grave Buster, and Rashu introduces him to someone who played during the closed beta testing. Sui later learns that the current top dog of Grave Buster is a man named Dark Tiger, leader of a group named Precious. Precious has been consolidating its power by attacking players and stealing their money. Sui visits Rei's dorm room, but her belongings have been left untouched for days, including a small diddle of his character Jin. Elsewhere, Grave Busters becomes a phenomenal hit, even though it's basically a pay-to-win NFT game. A girl charms her way into the good graces of two men, who willingly pay a combined 700,000 in in-game currency for her to join them. In Stage 35 of Grave Busters, the newly revived Gold Hunters, now teamed up with a man named Wild Wolf, prepare for another tomb raid. Wild Wolf tries to appease the rest of the Gold Hunters, who have grown impatient with waiting. They finally spot their unsuspecting prey, the three players from earlier. After the three players defeat a few monsters, Phoebe and Farin successfully charm them away from the other girl. It was incredibly easy given Phoebe's advanced charm and Farin's stellar acting. Phoebe and Farin lead their three gullible victims into a trap. The girl has to get it through her companion's thick skulls that they were played. Wild Wolf leaps down and makes a stellar hero's entrance. Later, they celebrate another good day of mugging. But they notice a man in distress at the adjacent table. The gold collectors are unsettled to learn that the man was the leader of the generals, a powerful group under Precious, who were slaughtered by a single woman. After spending the last of his money, the man disappears. They return to preying on new players. As advertised, a player's power within the game is directly proportional to how much money they have invested in their character. Wild Wolf, a player worth 50 million yen, stabs one of their unfortunate victims. When your money reaches 0, you die, and your account disappears forever. Suddenly, the prison holding them is shattered by none other than the aforementioned crazed woman from before. She avoids the gold hunter's attempts to fight back, and after feigning surrender, she traps them in an even stronger cage. Wild Wolf fearfully backs away from the woman, promising to hand over every valuable item he has, but it is all a ruse for her to lower her guard. He stabs her with a special sword that absorbs a player's financial power, but it only works if the victim's money is less than the attacker's. Unfortunately for him, the woman is one of the 5 people in the game with over 100 million financial power. She decides to show him what true strength is like by dropping a gigantic gold bar from the sky. Phoebe demands to know the woman's name, and she introduces herself as the Collector, the self-proclaimed enemy of tomb raiders everywhere. Wild Wolf's money drops to 0, and he is killed off. In another place, a young boy named Takeshi dreams of making enough money to leave the slums with an older girl Maikan. Takeshi is a man of taste and culture. Takeshi tries to enter a tournament with a real 10 million yen prize, but he is unable to pay the 50,000 yen entry fee. He tries sneaking into the venue instead, but he runs into Sui, who is looking for a person named Lao Long, who is in charge of the beginner's course. Twin Star carries them into the arena, where they are just in time to watch the finals match between Viking and Ayu, both of whom boast to be the best ice users in the world. An exasperated Fu remarks that the only thing Ayu is the best at is bragging. Sui asks Takeshi who he thinks will win, and he replies, "Me." His book suddenly shines, causing Twin Star to drop them both. They fall on top of Ayu, killing him. Fu and Furin facepalm. Due to an obscure rule, Sui and Takeshi are recognized as legitimate competitors. Takeshi apologizes for dragging Sui into this mess, but he needs the 10 million yen prize no matter what. In a flashback, Takeshi and Maiken grew up inseparable. I'm not sure if they're actual siblings, but I hope not. After obtaining Seabays, Takeshi promised to raise enough money to bring them both out of poverty. Takeshi relies on his power memory album, which allows him to store photographs and use them as power. Predictably, most of these photographs are of Maiken. When Maiken falls terminally ill, Takeshi became desperate, prompting him to enter the King of Iron Fist tournament. Back in the present, he conjures a hammer that fires rockets against Viking, but they are largely ineffective. Takeshi's photographs burn up as a result of him using his power, but he won't need any of them as long as he can save Maiken. Takeshi charges into Viking, but Sui grabs his cloak, causing him to trip. Twin Star keeps Viking distracted by doing an impromptu cheer dance, and thankfully, he's too simple-minded to catch on. Sui shows Takeshi that his photo album is now nearly completely empty, which he believes Maiken wouldn't want. Takeshi is still desperate to earn money for her, so Sui offers to take his place in the battle. Long announces a change in fighters, but when they display Sui's data on screen, it reveals that he hasn't even completed the beginner's quest yet, so his billion yen status is concealed. An overconfident Viking encases Sui in a prison of ice and prepares to smash him with ice, but Twin Star jumps in to defend him. Twin Star threatens to show them all her beautiful but terrifying form, but she accidentally reverts to her cute and adorable form instead. Viking can't help but smother them with love and care, so Takeshi runs in and rescues her. That made no sense at all. Angered, Viking starts blasting Takeshi with ice, but Twin Star reverts to her human form. Twin Star transforms into her true Jade Dragon form, blasts Viking into a jade statue, and shatters him. Sui and Takeshi are declared the winners. Sui allows Takeshi to take the 10 million yen, but he realizes too late that the 10 million was in real-life currency. He sadly leaves penniless, but Long wonders who Sui really is, and if he is somehow connected to the Collector. Sui arrives at the beginner's course and meets his fellow initiates, Sha, a jovial, easygoing guy revealed to be his classmate in the real world, and Titan, who is aloof, serious, and no-nonsense. Their instructor, Rin, leads them to a nearby valley to conduct their beginner's exam. Their task is simple: to defeat the tunnel apes that live in the area. Rin instructs them to manifest their busters, their personal weapons that materialize when they first play the game. Titan's is a giant gauntlet aptly named Metal Fist, while Shaw's is a large chakram dubbed Storm Eye. Sui is hesitant to reveal his, and he chooses to fight with his fists. The tunnel apes are protected by a thick hide, so Rin directs them to attack the chief ape, who is enhancing his brethren's defensive abilities. Titan rushes headfirst and crushes their leader with a single blow. With the tunnel apes' defenses gone, Rin and the others can freely finish off the stragglers. However, there is a twist. Rin tells him their true test is to defeat her. She tosses out 3 daggers in a cone. Titan deflects it with his familiar Sui, while Su weaves his head, and Sha is hit. Sha remembers that Sui is poor and offers to sponsor him with his family's money. But Rin points out that a kunai is still in his forehead. She believes Sui is holding back and demands that he show his buster, but he is still reluctant to reveal all his cards. Titan grows impatient, and he attacks Rin unprovoked. Sha finally remembers that Titan is a world-famous virtual fighting game champion who suddenly disappeared from the scene. The reason is that, after Titan won his 3rd straight tournament, his father immediately presented him with a Seibei as his new frontier to conquer. With these lofty expectations placed on his shoulders, Titan intends not to disappoint. Titan yells at them to help him defeat Rin, and Sha, having fallen head over heels for her, reluctantly does so. So he finally uses his buster, the Raven Scarf, and engages its first ability, First Blood, which allows him to steal the ability of fallen player. Sha shows him the power of his Storm Eye, which allows him to become as swift and translucent as the wind. Titan pushes Rin over a cliff, right where Sha is waiting. However, despite being invisible, he is stabbed from behind. Sui rushes to his side, and Sha's only regret is that he couldn't die on Rin's lap. His one wish is to get her line number one day. He passes away, but he is the most base character here by far. In the real world, Sha excitedly tells his mother that he's finally made a friend. His mom asks him if he's hallucinating. Titan, who fancies himself as the strongest player alive, refuses to lose against someone like Rin, and Sui, now using Sha's ability, tracks down and discovers the true instructor, Theron. When Titan realizes that he was fighting a clone all along, he is furious. Sui praises Rin's decoy mirage ability, since it not only fooled him, but Titan as well. Rin passes them both, and they receive an ally card, which contains all their details and allows them to form teams. Titan, unsatisfied with how things played out, attacks Rin again. Sui rescues her, and they seek shelter in an abandoned building. He makes a deal with Rin. If he can defeat Titan, then she'll team up with him. He'll get to prove it soon, as Titan quickly finds them. Sui makes use of Sha's wind techniques, but Titan is confident that a loser's ability won't affect him. However, during a brief engagement, Sui gets the better of Titan after fooling him with a leaf clone and landing a scratch on his face and cheek. Sui urges him to surrender, but the word isn't in Titan's vocabulary. During Titan's previous champion ceremony, a few audience members picked a fight with him by calling him a Nepo baby. Titan angrily engages in a fistfight with them, forcing his family to pay the 2 victims hush money to keep the family's reputation intact. Titan, tired of being told what to do, decides to do whatever he wants. Back in the present, Titan summons the ultimate form of his weapon, the Blade of Teibutan, which looks like the car that beat Lightning McQueen in Cars 3. Titan pours in every last bit of his 100 million yen fortune, and he speeds into Sui, oblivious to the fact that his financial power is in the billions. His car crashes on impact, and after a moment of disbelief, Titan's car implodes like a submarine. The resulting explosion buries Sui and Rin underneath some rubble, where he manages to establish a rapport with her, insisting that she join his team. He also manages to learn that she possesses the ability to scan a person's equipment. Suddenly they were free, when a carriage burst from the ground. It is the same women, Collector. Rin is shocked to see that the Collector has a staggering 10 tomb relics, when even a billionaire should only have one. The Collector fires at Rin with a plush round, temporarily turning her into a doll. She then forcibly feeds Sui, a creature that plants itself inside his stomach, and explains to him that it holds the key to saving Rei, who is currently held by the totems. She warns him not to trust anything Temujin says, and leaves. Before she disappears into a portal, she fires a gun at Kita, an agent of the totems. Rin returns to normal, and Kita tries to pry information out of him. He hunts him down using Sha's wind powers, and though he believes he has the advantage in speed at first, the truth is, Kita is the faster player. Rin rescues him from being slashed by Kita's blades, but even with the 2 of them, they are completely at his mercy, and they can do nothing but defend. They notice that there seem to be numbers on their hands, and they discover that after being hit 33 times, it forces you to log out. Rin and Sui are kicked out of the game, and are unable to log in for a week. Sui receives a call from Temujin, who tells him to listen carefully if he wants to save Rei. Temujin orders Sui to participate at Stage 18's festival, which is meant to kickstart the clearing of Stage 0. He is also told to meet with someone named Nishi. Sui recalls his celebrity status as Jin in Dungeon Century, but laments that he is useless now. He reunites with Wan Choi after what feels like forever, and he goes to sleep. The next morning, he notices a commotion out in the courtyard, and he spots a girl being swarmed by a group of men. She turns out to be Farin, and when the guys learn that Sui is somehow involved with her, they start pelting his dorm room with rocks. Sui meets with Farin at the school's cafe, but he is nervous about interacting with someone in real life. A waitress impatiently asks him to order something, as he is holding up a line. Sui has nothing more than spare change in his wallet, but Farin goes and orders nearly everything on the menu, which amounts to 20,000 yen. The waitress asks him to pay immediately, but even he knows he doesn't have that kind of money. A few bullies walk up to Sui and mock him for being poor, but Farin boasts that Sui is a billion player, even if it's just in Grave Buster. They tell him to prove it by paying the bill using his in-game currency, which is something he didn't know you could do. The waitress scans his Sibei, which miraculously pays the bills. The three bullies are left speechless. Later, Sui explains to Farin his mission to rescue Rei from within Grave Buster. They log in together and head to the Stage 18 festival. The stage is filled with players, and Farin explains that whenever a stage is cleared, the players rebuild it themselves and transform it into a settlement. Sui seeks Twin Star's help in learning more about totems, but her lack of clothes leads Farin to believe that Sui is actually a deviant. While at a restaurant, Sui overhears players talking about the rumored 6th Phantom Billion player. They suddenly stand up, and he initially believes they're about to try and talk to him, but they go outside and receive transfer rings that will take them to Stage 18. They begin to be teleported away, and Sui and Farin follow suit. Sui and Farin arrive at Stage 18, the gateway to the fabled Stage 0. Tomb beasts emerge from the pillars, catching many of the players off guard. A desperate and all-out brawl occurs, and Sui watches for himself a variety of weapons at the disposal of other players. The stage boss, Aslan the Bloodied, awakens. The various players throw everything they have at Aslan, but his healing skill heals him faster than they can hurt him. Elsewhere, Nishi, one of the players under Temujin, grows impatient with waiting for Sui. She ignores Kita's warnings, and she conjures a mirror that transports her to Sui's. Nishi creates another mirror that allows him to peer into Rei's room. He tries to call out her name, but she has trouble hearing his voice. Nishi dispels the mirror and attacks Sui, intending to put him and his tomb artifact to the test. Meanwhile, Aslan slaughters the under-equipped players sent as cannon fodder. He summons his Mosquito Legion, which transforms their victims into droplets of blood to further amplify his powers. However, he is unsatisfied with this base prey, and he seeks something stronger. He senses that something is above him. Nishi confirms the power of Sui's Raven Scarf, and she relays Temujin's orders for Sui to enter Stage 0. Aslan rides a wave of blood to the top, having been searching for Sui all this time. He bestows Sui with a key that will allow him to enter Stage 0. But before that, he must undergo one final test. Aslan transforms into his ultimate form, the Bloody Buddha, and shows him his weakness, a core in his stomach. Defeating him will also release the seal on some of Sui's memories, another one of Yuki's final acts. However, Nishi suspects the seal contains more than just memories. If that were the case, Yuki would have just told him himself. Sui activates his Raven Scarf, and he draws upon one of its 6 powers, the Raven Blade. Nishi and Farin flee, and they leave Sui to his fate. With the Raven Blade, Sui's speed has tripled, giving Aslan little time to regenerate. He topples him over the pillar, but when Sui tries to finish the job, a barrier deflects his blade. Sui launches a desperate assault, but Aslan simply grows stronger with every slash, as the pool of blood continuously regenerates and augments his strength. After a single exchange, cracks form on Sui's Raven Sword. He notices a strange symbol above his head, which Aslan explains is a Snow Lotus curse. After 80 seconds, the blood inside Sui will explode, killing him. However, if he can steal Aslan's core in time, the curse will be lifted. Sui's sword shatters, but he notices a strange gas emitting from it, and he has a bright idea. The other players also begin feeling energized by the smoke. He goads Aslan into using his ultimate move, and he gladly obliges. While he begins chagrining it, Sui rushes in and slices Aslan from head to toe with his sword. The other players assist in trying to attack Aslan, but it matters little as he can freely regenerate himself with their spilled blood. He finally unleashes his ultimate attack, the Crimson Dragon Blast, which wipes out half